In the previous story, we told of Old Demon defeating a water demon. After returning home, feeling a bit of self-satisfaction, his wife reminded him of an old event. Unexpectedly, that reminder touched on his pain. His wife knew she had misspoken and quickly apologized, pouring him some wine to make amends. Old Demon drank a few cups of wine and sighed. He was reminded of his close friend who had passed away years ago, a painful memory he could never forget. After drinking a few cups of wine, he went to bed. The alcohol made him want to fall asleep quickly, but his heart was still heavy with thoughts. However, lying in bed, he tossed and turned, unable to sleep. The pain of the past came rushing back, preventing him from resting peacefully, his heart filled with regret. He suddenly remembered a story from his youth. Tears streamed down his cheeks, a pain that could not be healed after so many years. In those days, he was just over 20 years old, a member of the village's militia. Every day after finishing his farm work, he would go to the militia's yard to train. At that time, he had a close friend named Futan. The two of them were inseparable, training together and sharing all their joys and sorrows. Their relationship was very close. They not only ate and lived together, but also treated each other like brothers, and nothing could tear them apart. Their friendship was very strong. They were always by each other's side, overcoming all the difficulties and challenges in life. An admirable friendship. One day, as the two of them were training, the militia captain came running frantically. He reported that someone had died in the village's yard and ordered everyone to gather. Hearing the news, both of them became excited. They quickly ran with the captain to the yard, their hearts filled with curiosity and eagerness to see what had happened. That yard had previously belonged to a landlord, but was later abandoned. Every year, a few people would hang themselves there, making it a very ghostly place. Old Demon pushed through the crowd to get inside. His action displeased a few villagers who were trying to get a look. He was about to argue with them, but was stopped by Futan. He pulled him into the yard, not wanting him to cause any unnecessary trouble. In the middle of the yard, a body was lying there. The militia captain was there, acting like a police officer investigating the scene. A rather funny sight. Old Demon approached and asked the captain if it was another suicide by hanging. The captain just told him to see for himself and said nothing more. When they got closer, both of them realized that it was not a hanging. Furthermore, the victim's eyes were open, a very frightening and haunting sight. On the ground was the body of a stranger. His eyes were wide open, his mouth agape, and there was a black bruise on his neck. He looked very scary and gruesome. The captain ordered the body to be taken away. After that, he and Futan stayed there for the night to prevent any unexpected incidents. A risky decision. The militia had 4 or 5 people, and they all slept together on a large bed. Old Demon couldn't sleep, so he recounted the ghost story of the house where the murder had just happened. One of his friends brushed it aside, thinking it was just a superstition. His words displeased Old Demon, who felt he was being looked down upon. He explained by recounting the story of how the landlord's family had raped a maid. After that, the girl had hanged herself and became a vengeful spirit. He also said that the vengeful spirit had killed more than 10 people in their family. When he got to the climax of the story, Futan snatched the flashlight from him and told him to go to sleep. The other friend was curious and asked him where he had heard those stories. He didn't believe the baseless rumors, thinking they were just fabrications. He said that he had heard it from a villager. Hearing this, the friend laughed. because that person was famous for being a braggart and was not trustworthy. Seeing that his friend absolutely didn't believe him and even mocked him, Old Demon got angry. He was determined to prove to him that he wasn't lying. The two of them started an argument. In the end, they decided to make a bet, a very risky and dangerous bet. Everyone witnessed the bet. If Old Demon could stay in the house where the murder had just happened for one night and return safely, the friend would lose the bet, a roasted chicken and a bottle of wine. Fu Tan tried to advise him against it, but Old Demon had made up his mind. He said he would definitely win and that there was no need to worry about him. The next evening, everyone gathered in front of the house. The bet was about to begin. The atmosphere became very tense and exciting. Old Demon was fully prepared. To be safe, he even brought a rifle from the militia, a very careful preparation. He and Fu Tan took their flashlights and walked into the yard. The night covered everything, creating a very gloomy and spooky atmosphere. The house had been abandoned for many years. Everything was in ruins. Old Demon was curious and asked Fu Tan if he believed in ghosts. The two of them walked and talked, going back and forth in the yard. They tried to stay calm, not letting the gloomy atmosphere of the place affect them. Although they were together, when they looked up at the rafters where many people had hanged themselves, they couldn't help but feel a little scared and uneasy. They tried to talk to each other to ease the tension. They discussed whether or not to believe in ghosts, a timeless topic for people. Fu Tan was always smarter than Old Demon. With just a few words, he said that only those who do evil fear ghosts, and he had him cornered, leaving him with no rebuttal. After walking around for a bit, they didn't find anything unusual. They found a room with a bed and prepared to go to sleep, hoping for a peaceful night. The two of them spread some dry grass on the bed and lay down. Feeling cold, Old Demon deliberately moved closer to Fu Tan, making him uncomfortable. The more uncomfortable Fu Tan got, the more amused Old Demon was, wrapping his arms around his friend. Fu Tan knew his friend's nature, so he just stayed silent, closed his eyes, and tried to sleep. Old Demon even joked, "What would you do if we met a ghost tonight?" Fu Tan angrily replied that he would just let it do whatever it wanted to him. He was too tired of his friend's jokes and just wanted to be quiet so he could fall asleep. Old Demon excitedly pointed at the roof. He said that there was a hole in the roof and they could see the twinkling stars in the night sky. Fu Tan looked up and it was true. There was a big hole in the roof through which they could see a sky full of stars, a beautiful sight. Seeing that Fu Tan was also interested, Old Demon suddenly asked him a question. He was curious to know if there was anything special he wanted to do. Fu Tan thought for a moment and then replied that he wanted to read more books. However, when he asked Old Demon the same question, he had already fallen asleep. Fu Tan smiled, looking at his carefree friend. After that, he also turned over and fell asleep. That night, the wind began to blow harder. While sleeping, Old Demon suddenly heard the door open. A cold gust of wind blew in, making him shiver and wake up. Fu Tan was nowhere to be found. When he looked at the door, he saw Fu Tan walking out with his head bowed. He called out to him, but he didn't answer and just kept walking silently. At first, he thought Fu Tan had woken up to go to the restroom. However, worried for his friend, he quickly grabbed his gun and followed him, not daring to be careless. He walked faster, getting behind Fu Tan. However, no matter how he called, he didn't answer, acting as if he was a soulless person. He felt that something was strange. He walked in front of Futan, looked at his face, and was startled with horror. His face was vacant, and his eyes were wide open. Old Demon realized that Futan was sleepwalking. He knew that if he woke a sleepwalker up abruptly, they could die, so he just quietly followed him. Futan staggered to the room where people had hanged themselves. He pushed the door open and walked in, without any hesitation or fear. Old Demon also followed him in. He saw Futan walk to the corner of the room and pick up a rope, a very suspicious action. After that, he dragged an old stool over. He stepped onto the stool, tied the rope to the rafter, preparing for a horrifying action. When Futan was about to put his neck in the rope, Old Demon realized that something was wrong. This was not sleepwalking, but being possessed by a ghost, a very dangerous situation. He quickly put down his gun and grabbed Futan's legs, trying to hold him back. He screamed loudly, trying to wake him up, but it was useless. Just as he was trying to save his friend, a cold voice came from behind him. The voice said that Futan had come here to stay with it. He was startled with horror and turned his head. He saw a woman with disheveled hair standing behind him. He didn't know if she was human or a ghost. The woman laughed a gruesome laugh. A cold gust of wind blew, making her hair fly up, revealing a face with only one eye, which was very scary. Old Demon realized that this was the ghost who had hanged herself in the legend. He quickly bent down, picked up his gun, aimed it at the female demon, and was about to fire. However, he pulled the trigger several times, but the gun did not fire. It seemed that some supernatural force was preventing him from shooting. The female demon laughed a gruesome laugh and waved her hand. The gun in his hand was sent flying away. He couldn't hold on to it, completely helpless against her power. Old Demon quickly wanted to save Futan. However, he realized that his body could no longer move, a very frightening feeling. He could only move his eyes and mouth. He looked at Futan hanging from the rafter, trying to call his name, his voice filled with pain and helplessness. Afraid that Futan would die, he had no other choice. He could only beg the female demon to spare his friend's life, not knowing what else to do. The female demon agreed to spare Futan. However, she made a condition, a very cruel and wicked request that he could not accept. She demanded that he use a piece of wood to gouge out his own eye. Only then would she spare Futan's life, a very painful exchange. Old Demon held the piece of wood and raised it to his eye, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. The female demon reminded him that if he hesitated, Futan would die. He glanced at Futan, his heart filled with an internal struggle. He couldn't do it, but he also couldn't let his best friend die. He saw that Futan's face had turned purple and he was about to stop breathing. That sight made him stop hesitating and he was determined to act. Not wanting his friend to die, he made up his mind. He told the female demon that he would give her an eye, but she had to keep her word. After saying that, he used a piece of wood to stab his own eye. A bone-piercing pain hit him, and he screamed in extreme agony, with blood flowing everywhere. After the intense pain, his body could move again. He glanced at Futan, hoping he was safe and no longer in danger. Seeing that the female demon was still lingering around Futan, his mind became hazy. He staggered, picked up his gun, fired a shot at the female demon, and then passed out. When he woke up, The first thing he saw was the broken rope on the rafter. He quickly looked for Fu Tan, hoping he was still alive. Fu Tan was lying next to him, but he was no longer breathing. He hugged his friend's body and wailed tragically, his heart filled with regret and pain. The next morning, everyone found them. Fu Tan was dead. An old demon had lost an eye, a heartbreaking tragedy. Losing one eye almost cost him his life. 10 days later, when he was finally able to get out of bed, the first thing he did was to visit Fu Tan's grave. He brought the roasted chicken and the bottle of white wine that he had won in the bet. He tore off a chicken leg and placed it on his friend's grave, his heart filled with sorrow and regret. He also tore off a piece for himself, eating and drinking. It was as if Fu Tan was sitting across from him, and the two brothers were enjoying the fruits of their victory together. He ate and drank, but then he couldn't hold back his tears. The tears kept streaming down his cheeks, a pain that could never heal. He banged his head on the tombstone, continuously apologizing. He blamed himself for his desire to win, which had caused the death of his best friend, an ultimate regret. Lying in bed, he recalled the old story as if it had just happened yesterday. Although he was old, the tears still flowed, and he couldn't hold them back. The couple discussed that they would go to Fu Tan's grave tomorrow. They wanted to light a stick of incense for him and pray for his soul to find peace. One morning, Old Demon left the house. He was carrying 2 wild chickens, and he told his wife to pack them up to take back to his hometown to pay his respects at his friend Fu Tan's grave and visit his relatives. He told his wife to pack some wood ear mushrooms and shiitake mushrooms as well. He wanted to bring a lot of gifts for his relatives. If his wife hadn't stopped him, he probably would have brought a dozen bags. The couple finished packing, locked the door, and went to the bus station. The journey from his house to the village required a bus ride of more than an hour, which was a considerable distance. In those days, there was only 1 bus per day. Old Demon walked ahead, constantly urging his wife to walk faster, afraid that they would miss the only bus of the day. The couple hurried to the bus station. A few people were already waiting there. They were all familiar faces, close neighbors. The people who were waiting for the bus all recognized him. They greeted him warmly, and some even enthusiastically helped him with his bags, showing their affection and respect. It had been 2 or 3 years since he had returned to his hometown. Although his relatives were gone, the close neighbors still made him feel a sense of longing for his hometown that he could never forget. After they chatted for a few minutes, the bus arrived. The couple quickly got on the bus, beginning their journey back to their hometown after being away for so long. The bus rolled along, taking them back to their hometown. The familiar road and familiar scenery appeared before their eyes, bringing back many old memories. Although he had only been away from his hometown for 2 or 3 years, he couldn't suppress his homesickness. Throughout the journey, he kept pointing things out, introducing the familiar scenery to his wife. He had told his wife countless times about which mountain was which forest was which, and which river was which. However, in his eyes, everything was still very dear and intimate. The bus drove for more than an hour and then stopped. The couple got off the bus, but they had not yet arrived. From here to his house, they still had to cross mountains and streams, a considerable distance. Old Demon was overjoyed. He didn't feel tired at all. The couple walked and chatted happily, enjoying the fresh air of their hometown. However, when they were halfway up the mountain, the sky suddenly became dark. Black clouds gathered, and thunder and lightning roared, signaling a heavy rain was about to fall, which was very unusual. Before he could even finish his sentence, a torrential rain began to pour. He knew there was a cave on the mountain where they could take shelter, so he quickly guided his wife towards it, without a moment's hesitation. The rain was very heavy, and the couple quickly ran into the cave. Although they tried their best, their clothes were still soaked, and they were chilled to the bone. He told his wife to sit down and rest, while he stood at the mouth of the cave, looking out at the rain. The rain was a white blur, and he didn't know when it would stop. The rain was both heavy and fast, and before long it had formed small streams. The water from above cascaded down, flowing violently, creating a frightening scene. He felt worried because to get home, they still had to cross a river. With such heavy rain, the river water might rise, and they would not be able to cross. His wife saw he was worried and told him to sit down and rest. She comforted him, saying that the rain would probably stop soon and that there was no need to worry so much. They should just wait calmly. Having no other choice, he sat down. He took a few steamed buns from his bag and warmed them over the fire, preparing for a makeshift meal. Seeing that her husband was so worried, his wife suggested that they move back to the village. She knew that he was always concerned about his hometown. Hearing this, his attitude immediately changed. He said that if they left, who would look after the forest? Furthermore, he had been attached to that place for decades. The couple chatted idly. He silently looked out of the cave, his heart still heavy with worry about the rain and the road back home. In the rain, he suddenly saw a figure walking towards them from a distance. Because the rain was so heavy, he couldn't see who it was, only a blurry silhouette. He went to the mouth of the cave and told his wife to look. He was curious to know who would be walking in such heavy rain, which was very strange and suspicious. His wife came closer and looked out. Sure enough, there was a person walking on the trail. It looked like an old woman with a small, thin body. The old woman was hunched over, leaning on a walking stick, walking with great difficulty. Because the road was slippery, she slipped and fell sprawling onto the ground. Seeing this, Old Demon quickly ran out of the cave. He wanted to go and help the old woman without a moment's hesitation or thought, a very kind action. When he got closer, he could see the old woman clearly. Her whole body was emitting a strange light, which made him feel a little uneasy and worried. The old woman's face was full of wrinkles. She looked to be about 70 or 80 years old. Her expression exuded a kind and benevolent aura, with no hint of malice. He helped the old woman up. Although the fall looked very hard, she was not injured at all, only covered in mud, which was very strange. He curiously asked why an old person like her would be walking alone in the rain. She replied that she was on her way to her granddaughter's house when the rain started unexpectedly. She said she was on her way to visit her granddaughter when she got caught in the rain. Fortunately, she met the couple, a very coincidental encounter. The couple helped the old woman into the cave, inviting her to sit by the fire. He even gave her a steamed bun, showing his concern and kindness. The old woman was very grateful and said that the couple had great fortune. Hearing this, he remained silent, while his wife sighed because they had no children. After a while of chatting, the rain stopped, The rain came and went quickly, leaving a fresh and quiet atmosphere, which was very pleasant. Seeing that the rain had stopped, Old Demon quickly wanted to continue their journey. He asked the old woman where her granddaughter's house was and if they should take her part of the way. However, the old woman said some strange things. She advised the couple not to continue their journey because there was danger ahead waiting for them. She warned them that if they continued, they would never be able to return home. Her words made the couple look at each other, feeling a bit strange. Old Demon did not pay attention to the old woman's words. He and his wife quickly left the cave and continued their journey back to their hometown. After walking a short distance, his wife discovered that the old woman was following them. She just walked quietly behind them without a word, which made her feel uneasy. He urged his wife to walk faster. That old woman was too strange, and being in this wild and desolate place, it was best not to get involved with her to avoid trouble. He thought that walking faster would shake her off. However, although she looked old and frail, she walked very fast and kept following them not far behind. Old Demon realized that they were being followed. He whispered to his wife to walk faster, trying to escape the strange old woman's pursuit. The couple sped up, walking a bit faster. They hoped they could leave the old woman behind and escape this annoying pursuit. However, no matter how fast they walked, the old woman could keep up. She just quietly walked behind them without a sound, which was very frightening. At this point, Old Demon realized that something was wrong. He guessed that they were being followed by some kind of demon, and the situation was very critical. The couple tried to walk a bit faster. When they turned a corner, they no longer saw the old woman, which was very strange. Old Demon turned his head back and saw that the old woman was no longer there. He breathed a sigh of relief, thinking he had shaken her off and there was nothing to worry about. He felt relieved and told his wife to hold on a little longer. As long as they crossed the river ahead, they would be home. It wasn't far anymore. However, just as he finished speaking, he discovered that the old woman had gotten ahead of them. She was sitting on a rock by the side of the road, staring at them. Old Demon was furious. He shouted, asking her what she wanted and why she kept following them, an incomprehensible action. However, the old woman did not reply. She only said that they should not continue, a mysterious warning that they could not understand. The old woman seemed to be getting angry. Her kind face suddenly became fierce, with sharp fangs and blood-red eyes, which was very frightening. Old Demon realized he had guessed correctly. It was a demon. He touched his shoulder and suddenly remembered that he had not brought his rifle, and the situation was very critical. While he was wondering what to do, loud noises suddenly echoed from the bottom of the mountain. It sounded bad, so he quickly ran to check. When he looked down, he and his wife were both scared pale. The sight before them was something they could not believe. A disaster was about to happen. At the foot of the mountain, the river was surging with violent waves. A flash flood from upstream was rushing down, carrying a destructive and very frightening force. The fierce floodwaters carried rocks and trees. The scene was very chaotic and scary, which made people feel terrified. Old Demon felt scared. If the old woman had not stopped them, the couple would have been swept away by the floodwaters and would not have survived. When he turned back to thank the old woman, he no longer saw her. She had disappeared without a trace, as if she had never been there. Old Demon understood that someone had saved the couple. He clasped his hands and bowed towards the forest. wanting to know which celestial being had come to their aid. The old woman's voice echoed from the forest. She said that because he had saved her daughter, she had come here today to repay his kindness. Hearing this, old demon understood everything. He realized that doing good deeds would eventually be rewarded, a very valuable lesson. Because of the flood, they could no longer cross the river. The couple discussed and decided to stay in a nearby village for the night, waiting for the water to recede. On the way, his wife joked that he encountered strange things wherever he went. She hoped that this time they wouldn't encounter anything else. In the previous story, Old Demon and his wife had escaped the flash flood. They decided to stay the night in a nearby village. Old Demon led the way, stopping a few times to rest, as he was afraid his wife would get tired. It was late at night when they finally arrived at the village. He had an old friend here and intended to visit him. However, from the moment they entered the village, they didn't see a single person. Normally, there should have been people walking around at this time. The eerie silence made Old Demon's wife feel very puzzled. Hearing his wife's question, Old Demon also felt that something was strange. It was not too early or too late. Why was there not a single person on the street? His wife was worried and asked if something had happened in the village. Normally, a few villagers should be out for a stroll at this hour. His wife felt uneasy because strange things always happened when she was with him. However, he didn't pay much attention to it and went straight to his old friend's house. It had been many years since he had seen this friend. He happily walked forward, knocked on the door, and called out his friend's name, hoping to see him soon. However, he knocked for a long time, but no one came to open the door. His wife was worried, wondering if there was no one in the house, which was very strange. Normally, at this hour, everyone would have returned from the fields. There should have been at least a few people in the house. It shouldn't have been so quiet. As the couple was about to leave, the door creaked open. The person who opened the door was Dong San. Seeing his old friend, a look of relief appeared on his face. Seeing his friend at home, Old Demon asked why he had been so slow to open the door. He also didn't understand why his friend had such a strange attitude. Dong San looked very tense. He quickly invited the couple into the yard and then quickly bolted the door. A very suspicious action. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. He invited the couple into the house to sit down, as if he had just gone through something very scary. After sitting down in the house, Old Demon asked his friend. He wondered why every house in the village was locked and why there was not a single person on the street. Dong San did not hide anything. He said that there was a zombie haunting the village. His words completely astonished Old Demon. Hearing this, Old Demon became interested. He quickly asked his friend to recount the entire story, wanting to know what had happened. Dong San said that there was a couple in the village who often argued. The husband had slapped his wife, and she, feeling wronged, drank poison and committed suicide. The family had a funeral for the wife. Everything went normally, and no one expected that a horrifying thing was about to happen. 2 days after she died, the wife sat up in her coffin.
What is that thing?
The sight terrified everyone. All the people who were there were scared and ran away. They all said that the wife had become a zombie, a scary creature from legends. From then on, Every night, she would return to the village to wander. A few villagers had seen her and were so scared that they fell ill and didn't dare to go out. The most serious case was a daughter-in-law of another family. One evening, she was feeding chickens in the yard, preparing to put them in the coop to go to sleep. Since it was not completely dark yet, the main door was not closed. She suddenly felt a cold gust of wind blow past her. She turned around and saw the person standing right behind her. The daughter-in-law was so scared that she fell to the ground and wet her pants. Fortunately, the zombie did not harm her. It just grabbed a chicken and left. After that, all the villagers were scared. They would lock their doors as soon as it got dark, and no one dared to go out for a walk anymore. Dong San finished his story and remembered that Old Demon often encountered such things. He asked him to think of a way to subdue the zombie. Old Demon refused, humbly saying that he didn't have that skill. However, Dong San didn't believe him because he knew his friend's abilities very well. After much pleading, Old Demon had no choice but to agree. He remembered a method he had once heard of but wasn't sure if it would work. He told Dong San to have someone find a few hens and black dogs. In addition, they also had to prepare a fishing net, a very strange request. Seeing that Old Demon knew how to deal with the problem, Dong San quickly went to get things ready. He didn't want to waste another second and was very eager. In less than an hour, there were roosters crowing and dogs barking in the yard. Old Demon knew that Dong San had everything ready and it was time to act. Sure enough, Dong San walked in, out of breath. He reported that everything was ready and told Old Demon to go out to the yard to give instructions to the villagers. Old Demon went out to the yard and saw about 7 or 8 villagers there. They were all brave people who had volunteered to participate in this task. 4 or 5 black dogs and a few hens were brought over. Old Demon asked who had an empty yard that they weren't using, as he needed to borrow one to lure the zombie. To get rid of the zombie, the villagers were very cooperative. A woman said that she had an empty yard that she could lend to them for the plan. Old Demon told Dong San to choose a few strong and brave people to stay and help. The rest were to go home and hide well. Dong San chose the people. The group, along with the dogs, chickens, and net, went straight to the empty yard on the west side of the village, preparing for a sleepless night. Once in the yard, he told everyone to hide the black dogs in the house and muzzle them. After that, they were to kill all the hens and throw them into the middle of the yard. Everyone followed his instructions. They hid in concealed places, waiting for the zombie to appear. The atmosphere was very tense. Around 9 or 10 o'clock at night, there was a commotion. Something was slowly approaching, signaling that a life or death battle was about to begin. Old Demon, hiding behind the window, whispered that it had arrived. Everyone in the house turned to look at the gate, their hearts filled with excitement and fear. A person from outside walked in. The person's walk was very stiff and not fluid. They did not look like a normal person, which was very suspicious. It was none other than the zombie. It walked past the dead chickens on the ground, not paying any attention to them, a very strange action. When it saw the chicken blood on the ground, it suddenly opened its mouth wide and let out a growl. Its face was covered in dried blood, which was very frightening. The zombie squatted down and picked up a chicken that was about to die. It began to eat it raw, with chicken feathers and blood splattering everywhere. A horrifying sight. Seeing that the time was right, Old Demon gave the signal. He shouted loudly, ordering everyone to release the dogs without a moment of hesitation. The young men quickly removed the muzzles from the dogs. Immediately, the black dogs, with their blood-red eyes, rushed out and charged straight at the zombie. The black dogs barked loudly, charging straight at the zombie. They were not afraid and were determined to destroy this monster to protect the villagers. The zombie seemed to be very afraid of the black dogs. It quickly pushed the dogs that were lunging at it away and stood up, turning to run away, not daring to stay. However, its body was stiff, so it couldn't run fast. It was surrounded by the black dogs, who were biting and tearing at it, and it couldn't escape, which was a very tragic sight. When the dogs had chased the zombie away, Old Demon led everyone out of the house. He told them to follow him to see where it was hiding. Afraid that the young men would be in danger, he and Dong-san also quickly followed them. They didn't want anyone else to die because of this monster. Although they started right behind them, the young men quickly disappeared from sight. Old Demon and Dong-san could only try their best to catch up, not daring to be slow. The two of them, out of breath, chased the dogs to a cemetery on the east side of the village. This place was gloomy and cold, an ideal place for evil creatures to hide. From a distance, they saw the young men, holding the dogs, standing in front of an abandoned grave. It seemed they had found the zombie's hiding place. The zombie had crawled into a cave in the abandoned grave. That was where it had been hiding all this time, and no one knew about it. Old Demon told everyone to step back to avoid being contaminated by the deathly aura. After that, he peeked his head into the cave to check the situation very carefully. He was sure that the zombie was inside. He told Dong-san to get the fishing net that they had prepared and use wooden stakes to seal the entrance of the cave. After everything was done, he led everyone away from the cemetery. He said that tomorrow, when the sun was high, they would come back to subdue it. That night, nothing happened. The next afternoon, he and everyone else went back to the abandoned grave, preparing for the final battle with the monster. Old Demon told Dong-san to borrow a few long poles with hooks. He wanted to use them to pull the zombie out of the cave. A very clever plan. The young men followed his instructions. They carefully put the poles into the cave, and sure enough, they hooked something. The object was very heavy. One person could not pull it out. It took the help of others to slowly pull it out of the cave. In the end, it took 2 or 3 people working together to pull the zombie out. It had no way to escape. Its fate had been sealed. The zombie was pulled out into the sunlight. Its whole body started to smoke. It could not resist the power of the sun and was very weak. The curious villagers who saw the zombie on the ground were all scared. Its face was very frightening, and no one dared to get close to it. Old Demon shooed away the curious villagers. He asked if the girl's family was there and urged them to quickly cremate the body. The girl's husband was also there and immediately agreed. He was too tired of all this and just wanted to end everything quickly, not wanting to get involved anymore. With his consent, the villagers quickly gathered firewood and cremated the zombie's body. The story of the zombie ends here. Thanks to this, Dong-san was able to gain a lot of face. He took Old Demon back to his house and treated him to a lavish meal to thank him. The two old friends clinked their glasses. Dong-san thanked his friend for helping the village get rid of the menace and also for making him look good in front of the villagers. Old Demon also felt happy that he was able to help the villagers. He humbly said that he was only forced to act and it was a good thing that nothing bad had happened. While they were having fun, Dong San brought up an old memory. He asked Old Demon if he still remembered the thing they had encountered when they were young. In the previous story, we mentioned a memory from the youth of Old Demon and Dong San. After losing one eye and causing the death of his close friend, Fu Tan, he became withdrawn. His only remaining close friend was Dong San. That year, there was a prolonged drought for several months, and the crops in the fields were about to wither and die, making the villagers very worried. One day, the two of them were assigned to weed the fields. Dong San was so hot that he was drenched in sweat, while Old Demon was still wearing a thick padded jacket. Dong San teased him about this, which displeased him. He said that if he liked, he would let him meet a ghost so he would know what it was like. It was almost noon, and Dong San couldn't stand the heat anymore. He asked him to go to the riverbank to rest and drink some water before continuing, as there was no need to rush. While they were chatting, they mentioned a person in the village. Recently, he had suddenly become rich, and he looked like he had just made a fortune. He was rumored to have dug up a large ginseng root in the deep forest. That ginseng root had sold for a lot of money, which helped him change his life overnight. Dong San was full of admiration, but Old Demon didn't pay much attention. He said that finding ginseng was not something anyone could do. It required experience. Dong San then came closer, bragging that his father used to be a professional ginseng hunter. From a young age, his father had taught him how to find and harvest ginseng, so finding it was 10 times easier for him than for an ordinary person. Hearing Dong San's words, Old Demon was a little tempted. Dong San continued, saying that you have to be brave to get rich, and that wealth and luxury must be exchanged for taking risks. Dong San continued to persuade him. He said that on the mountain in the distance, there must be century-old ginseng, and if the two of them worked together, they would definitely find it. The two of them decided to act immediately. Old Demon went to borrow a hunting rifle, while Dong San went home to get his ginseng digging tools, preparing for the trip. After they were ready, the two of them set off towards the mountain. They hoped that this trip would bring them wealth and luxury. This mountain was very vast. It would take a whole month to cross it. On the mountain, there were countless rare and valuable plants, a place full of opportunities and dangers. When they got deep into the forest, he reminded his friend to be careful. In the deep forest, there were many dangers, and they shouldn't be too arrogant and should always be vigilant. Seeing him give a serious reminder, Dong San also became more serious. He was no longer careless and focused on observing his surroundings, guarding against any dangers that might occur. Not long after they got deep into the forest, Old Demon suddenly pushed Dong San. His action completely surprised him. Dong San fell sprawling onto the ground. As he was about to turn around and scold his friend, he heard a loud thud right next to him. A trap had sprung, revealing sharpened wooden stakes. If it weren't for the push, he would have been impaled. Old Demon quickly told his friend to get up, saying that they were surrounded. Dong San quickly picked up a rock and hid behind his friend, ready to fight. From behind the trees, 3 men emerged. They were all holding hunting rifles, their eyes filled with murderous intent, and they didn't seem to have good intentions. One of them had a scar on his forehead and asked them who they were. Dong San stammered that they were ginseng hunters and had no ill intentions. The scarred man laughed upon hearing this. He told the other two to lower their guns, saying that they were all on the same side and there was no need to be so tense. He said that they were also ginseng hunters. He asked if the two of them wanted to join them. Dong San was happy to agree. Dong San and the scarred man quickly formed an alliance. Old Demon said nothing and did not object, just went along with them, his heart filled with suspicion. On the way, the scarred man introduced them as the three Jiao brothers. However, Old Demon felt that their smiles were a bit fake. The eldest Jiao brother said that he knew of a place where there was precious ginseng. He wanted to take them there to harvest it together, a very tempting offer. He pointed to a high cliff. He said that there was a cave there, and inside was a purple ginseng root, a very rare type of ginseng. In front of them was a cliff with a natural cave. The eldest Jiao brother said that inside was a premium type of ginseng called purple ginseng. He was curious and asked if the two of them knew about this type of ginseng. Dong San had been told about it by his father, so he confidently replied. It turned out that there was a type of bird that ate ginseng seeds. After eating them, they would fly to caves with good feng shui and excrete them, which would grow into this rare ginseng. The eldest Xiao brother praised Dong San's knowledge. However, his two brothers were still looking at them with murderous intent, which was very suspicious. The eldest Jiao brother said that they would stay here for the night. That night, they would lure the ginseng baby out, catch it, and get rich. A perfect plan. That night, the eldest Jiao brother told his two brothers to build a fire so they could all sit together. Old Demon made an excuse to go to the restroom and pulled Dong San with him, as he had something to say. Dong San, although he didn't want to go, seeing Old Demon's attitude, he had to get up and follow him into the forest. He didn't understand why his friend was acting so strangely. When they got to a place where there were no people, Old Demon said that the three Jiao brothers were suspicious. However, Dong San did not quite believe his friend. He explained that ginseng hunters never share their spoils. Furthermore, this was an extremely rare type of ginseng, so it was very suspicious. Hearing his analysis, Dong San also began to feel something was wrong. Old Demon took out two talismans from inside his jacket, gave one to his friend, and told him to be careful. The two of them hid the talismans on themselves and returned to the campfire. They hoped that the talismans would be able to save them from the upcoming disaster. When the moon was high in the sky, the eldest Jiao brother looked at the sky and said that it was time to act. He signaled to everyone, preparing for a dangerous and mysterious hunt. He told the two of them to go into the cave first to scout. The three brothers would stay outside to stand guard, a very suspicious arrangement. Old Demon did not refuse. He put his rifle on his shoulder and, along with Dong San, began to climb the cliff towards the mysterious cave. When they were halfway up the mountain, he reminded his friend to be careful. He felt that the three Jiao brothers did not have good intentions and that they had to always be on guard. The two of them carefully climbed to the cave entrance. Old Demon went first with his rifle, stepping inside. The atmosphere was very tense and exciting. After only a few steps, they smelled a strong, foul odor. The odor came from deep inside the cave, which sent shivers down their spines. Very quickly, Old Demon discovered something unusual. He told his friend to look down at the ground, where a horrifying sight appeared. On the ground in the cave, There were countless human bones scattered everywhere. He didn't know how many people had died here. It was a very frightening sight. He knew that in a gloomy place like this, there could be no precious ginseng. He didn't understand why the three Jiao brothers had tricked them into coming here. The two of them went a little deeper. Suddenly, a child in black clothes flashed past them, then disappeared into the darkness, which was very strange. Old Demon thought he had seen things, but Dong San had also seen it. In a desolate cave like this, why would there be a child? Old Demon suddenly remembered. Legend has it that old Ginseng would transform into a child. Perhaps that child was the Ginseng baby from the legend. However, Dong San said that a Ginseng baby usually wears red clothes. He had never heard of a Ginseng that wore black clothes. He said that there was a type of ginseng that grew in an evil place which was called demon ginseng. Perhaps there was a demon ginseng in this cave, which was a very scary thought. Old Demon seemed not to understand. Dong San explained that demon ginseng fed on the flesh and blood of the dead and was a very dangerous poison. At this moment, the two of them understood. The skeletons in this cave must have been eaten by the demon ginseng, a very horrifying and frightening truth. This cave was very difficult to find unless someone showed you the way, and the ones who had led these victims here were none other than the three Jiao brothers. If it weren't for the talismans they had on them, the two of them would have likely died. The demon ginseng baby was afraid of the talismans, which was why it didn't dare to get close. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Old Demon came up with a plan. He wanted to punish the three Jiao brothers and make them pay for their crimes. Meanwhile, the three Jiao brothers were still outside. The elders said that they only needed 6 or 7 more lives for the demon ginseng to mature, and then they would be rich. As they were daydreaming about their wealth, they suddenly saw smoke coming from the cave. They thought there was a fire in the cave and were very worried. Afraid that the demon ginseng they had worked so hard to cultivate for years would be burned, the elders quickly led his two brothers to climb the mountain to check the situation. When they got into the cave, they saw smoke but no fire. This was because Old Demon had burned some wolf droppings to create smoke, a clever trap. The three brothers quickly went into the cave. When they realized they had not brought their talismans, they heard a rustling sound under their feet. From the ground, many vines reached out and wrapped around the youngest brother's legs. The second brother quickly fired his gun, shooting and cutting the vines, saving his brother. The three of them wanted to run out, but it was too late. The vines quickly spread out and surrounded them, giving them no way out. The three of them tried to resist, but in the end, they were all tied up by the vines. They couldn't break free and could only struggle in vain. The three Jiao brothers were tied up by the vines and had their life force sucked out. After that, from a dark corner in the cave, a child slowly appeared, which was very frightening. The child was the demon ginseng baby that the two of them had seen before. Looking at its vicious appearance, Old Demon also shivered. The two of them hid in the darkness. Dong San was so scared that his whole body was stiff. He could only ask his friend what they should do next, completely panicked. Old Demon held his rifle firmly. He said that no matter what, they could not let it continue to harm people. They had to destroy it immediately. He aimed directly at the demon ginseng baby and pulled the trigger. A gunshot echoed, tearing through the silence of the cave, carrying the hope of the two of them. The shot hit the monster's heart. It screamed and then disappeared, along with the vines on the ground. without a trace. Old Demon lowered his rifle and slowly walked out. The battle had ended, but all that remained was desolation and death, which was very haunting. The three Jiao brothers could not be saved. The two of them went deeper inside and discovered a pile of human bones on which a beautiful ginseng plant was growing. That was the demon ginseng from the legend. Its beauty was very enchanting, but it also hid a deadly danger that could not be underestimated. The two of them looked at the demon ginseng growing on the pile of bones and felt very disgusted. They discussed burning it to get rid of the future menace. The two of them decided to act immediately. They lit a large fire in the cave, burning both the demon ginseng and the skeletons, and no longer had the intention of looking for ginseng. At the dinner table, Dong San brought up the old memory again. He said that if it weren't for Old Demon, he would have likely died at the hands of the three Xiao brothers. The two of them clinked their glasses, reminiscing about their old memories. They had been through so many strange and dangerous things together, a very valuable friendship. In the previous story, Old Demon and Dong San reminisced about the old days. They both recalled the past while looking forward to the future. As the two were happily drinking wine, a man from outside walked in. He asked if Dong San was home, his face filled with worry. Dong San recognized the person. It was Old Han from the village. He warmly invited him in, not understanding why he had come at this hour. Old Han came because of Old Demon's reputation. He had a difficult matter and wanted to ask for his help, not knowing what else to do. Dong San invited him to sit at the table and drink wine. However, he only sat to the side, not daring to disturb their meal, his heart full of hesitation. Old Han said that he had a favor to ask. Dong San immediately guessed that it was about his son, a problem that had been going on for many years. Seeing that Old Han and Dong San seemed close, Old Demon patted his chest. He said to speak up, and he would definitely help. Without waiting for Old Han to speak, Dong San recounted the story. He said that Old Han's son had been possessed by a weasel spirit for many years and could not be cured. Hearing that Old Han's son was possessed by a weasel spirit, Old Demon felt that this matter would not be easy to resolve. Weasel spirits were very difficult to deal with. Since he had promised to help, he could not refuse. He told Old Han to recount the entire story so he could find a solution. Old Han sighed and told the story that happened 4 years ago. One morning, his son was preparing to feed the chickens as usual. However, when he got close to the chicken coop, he was stunned. A chicken had been bitten to death, covered in blood, a very pitiful and sorrowful sight. The son was furious and started cursing loudly. In those days, raising chickens for eggs to sell for money was not an easy task, so anyone would feel heartbroken. After scolding for a while and still not feeling better, he set a trap near the chicken coop. He was determined to catch the animal that had killed his chicken. The next day, the trap had indeed snapped shut. He was happy, thinking he had caught the culprit and avenged the chicken that had been bitten to death. It was a golden weasel whose back was broken by the trap. It died a tragic death. Its blood flowed out, staining the ground red, which was very frightening. He lifted the weasel, feeling immensely satisfied. He thought he had avenged the chicken, completely unaware that disaster was about to strike. To prevent other weasels from coming to cause damage, he did not put the trap away. The next morning, when he went to check, he was once again surprised. He discovered that another weasel had been caught in the trap. This time, the trap had clamped down on its neck. It was a very tragic and frightening death. Old Hans saw this and advised his son. He said that weasels hold grudges, so he should not offend them, and told him to put the trap away. The two of them thought that everything was over. However, they did not know that disaster had already struck. Early the next morning, he was awakened by the sound of chickens clucking. He intended to call his son to check the situation. However, no matter how he called, his son did not answer. A terrifying silence. He quickly put on his clothes and went to look for his son all over the house and yard, but could not find him. A feeling of unease rose within him, and he was worried for his son's safety. When he got to the door, he looked towards the chicken coop and was startled with horror. The sight before him was something he could not believe. It was very frightening. His son was squatting next to the chicken coop, holding a chicken and sucking its blood. On the ground were a few other chickens that had been bitten to death, covered in blood. He didn't understand what was wrong with his son and quickly went to shake him. He was curious and asked what he was doing and why he was acting so strangely. However, no matter how he called, his son did not answer. He seemed not to recognize him, acting like a complete stranger, which was very scary. He even used his elbow to push his father aside. His actions were very aggressive and showed no affection, which was very frightening. He would sometimes cry and sometimes laugh, running out of the house. He had to use a lot of effort to bring him back, a very chaotic scene. From then on, his son seemed to have become a different person. During the day, he would stay inside and not go out, but at night, he would run out to catch chickens and suck their blood. The whole village was disturbed by his actions. Everyone was very scared and angry. They could no longer tolerate it. Those who had been affected often came to his house to demand justice. They would knock on the door loudly, demanding a satisfactory explanation for this. Every time he heard the knocking, old Han would feel his heart clench. He didn't know what to do to face his neighbors. Having no other choice, he had to lie and say that his son had gone mad. He hoped that they would be understanding and forgive his son. To prevent his son from going out and harming the villagers' chickens, he had to lock him up in the house. He hoped that this would make things calm down. When he was not having a fit, his son would just sleep soundly. But when he was, he would both cry and laugh, a very pitiful and heartbreaking sight. Old Han, crying, recounted the entire story to Old Demon. He said that a well-behaved child had been ruined in such a way. Old Demon now understood the problem. He agreed to go to Old Han's house to check the situation, and if he could, he would definitely help. His wife saw him off at the door, telling him not to overexert himself. He just gave a vague reply, not wanting to make her worry about him.
What do you see?
Old Demon and Dong San followed Old Han to his house.
I don't know.
His son was sitting on the bed,
not good.
His head bowed, not saying a word, his eyes vacant, looking very haggard and pitiful. Seeing Old Demon enter, he showed no fear, but instead sat cross-legged, and his voice was no longer his own. It was very strange. When he left Dong San's house, Old Demon had told his friend to bring his gun. 1, to protect themselves, and 2, to use if necessary. The son suddenly lay on the bed, knowing Old Demon's purpose. He began to talk to him, as if to test his skills. Old Demon knew that the one talking to him was a weasel spirit. He clasped his hands together and tried to speak gently, asking it to leave the young man's body, but it showed him no respect. As the two were talking, a crow cawed outside. Old Demon became angry and decisively told Dong San to give him his gun. He took the gun from Dong San's hands and went out to the yard. He said nothing, raised the gun to the sky, and pulled the trigger. A gunshot echoed throughout the sky. After he fired, he turned and went back inside. Before Dong San could understand what was happening, a crow fell from the sky with a few bullet wounds on its body. The weasel spirit saw this and became furious. It stood on the bed, stomping its feet, thinking he was deliberately trying to intimidate it, a blatant provocation. Old Demon said he only wanted to scare the weasel spirit a little. He wanted it to know that if it couldn't talk peacefully, his gun was not just for show. However, the weasel spirit was not an easy opponent. It slapped itself hard in the face, showing him no respect at all, a very rude action. He was not angry and changed the subject. He wanted to use another way to persuade the weasel spirit, a very clever plan. He mentioned a weasel spirit at the crevice waterfall that he had once helped. Sure enough, the weasel spirit possessing the young man knew it. It was its relative. Seeing an opportunity, he mentioned the old weasel spirit on the mountain again. He hoped that this relationship could help him resolve the problem. Hearing this, the weasel spirit's expression changed. It said that she was its mother, and it was she who had sent it here to seek revenge. Seeing that it was working, Old Demon humbled himself and pleaded with it. The weasel spirit said that it could not decide on its own. It had to invite its mother to come. With that, the young man bowed his head and became still again. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the old weasel spirit to appear. A moment later, he slowly raised his head. However, his expression and voice had completely changed. It was like that of an old woman, which was very strange. Old Demon quickly begged the old weasel spirit to show him some respect and spare the young man. He hoped that she would agree and not make things difficult. The old weasel spirit did not make things difficult for him. She said that she could spare the young man, but the death of her 2 children could not be overlooked. Old Demon then made a proposal. He promised that Old Han's family would erect a memorial tablet and worship the dead weasels as if they were their ancestors. After the agreement was made, the young man again bowed his head and became still. The negotiation had ended, and everything had been resolved. Old Demon told Old Han that the weasel spirit had left. He urged him to quickly go and check on his son. Old Han shook his son a few times, and the son woke up. He was no longer crazy and confused like before. He was just a little weak. Old Demon never expected that he could persuade the weasel spirit to leave so smoothly. He had also accumulated some good karma and made a good connection. Old Demon instructed Old Han to find someone to erect a memorial tablet and worship the weasels as he had promised. After giving his instructions, he and Dong San left. On the way back, Dong San praised Old Demon profusely. He even invited him to stay for a few more days so they could talk more. However, he refused. He said that he had to go home to his wife and could not stay any longer. His heart was filled with a longing to be reunited with her.